And then we've got YouTube streaming going on.
All right.
And what's the reason we're doing Zoom with David for his presentation? He just wasn't able to get
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
If we're ready, let's call this meeting to order. This is a Board of Trustees special meeting. Today is Thursday, February 10th. Time is 7:03. All trustees are here and present except for Chris Quinn. So if we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda as presented?
Someone speaks.
Seeing none, I would move approval.
I'll second.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 3, the business today is new business grant application 2022. We have David Douglas online who can give us a brief presentation about this proposal.
Yes, I am here, Mayor Newberry. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks to you, Mayor Newberry, and the Board of Trustees for scheduling this special board meeting tonight on such short notice. This is, we believe, a very important opportunity for a grant that would if awarded to us, will provide a lot of funding to us to do quite a bit of work around town. This came to us rather suddenly. CJ Runge with Mile High Youth Board contacted Rocco Blasi last Tuesday or Wednesday. Said the opportunity existed for us to make this application, but we had to do so in haste to make the first application deadline, and encouraged us to do so because she felt like with them opening this up a statewide application process, that these funds would not be around. So she suggested that we shoot for the moon, go for the maximum that we could, get it in early, and let's see what happens. So that is the reason for us acting with such haste. The total amount of the grants available is $3 million. Our application is actually for approximately $270,000. The projects under this grant are fuels mitigation, and the project would have to be complete by December 31st of 2023. The grant defines what's called a strategic focus area, and essentially those are about 8 areas in the state of Colorado that have a higher priority, if you will. And Green Mountain Falls is within one of those strategic focus areas as defined. We have identified tracts of land and right-of-way and egress routes throughout the town that we would like to put into this project for remediation and mitigation. There's a total within those tracts of about 200 acres, but we are really going to pare down and focus on about 90 acres out of the 200 acres of total We are applying for what's called a crew time award grant and not a cash award. And what that means is we will partner with the Mile High Youth Corps as our partner to carry out the project, and they will be paid directly. It also means that Green Mountain Falls will not be required to match any funds under this grant. We will, however, have some in-kind obligations. One of those is the management and supervision of the project in coordination with the Mile High Youth Corps team to identify boundaries, meet with them to make sure that the scope is laid out, understood, and properly managed. Under the program, there is a minimum of 6 weeks of crew time. And by the way, a crew consists of 8 people, 40 hours a week, so 320 hours per week. So the minimum you can apply for is 6 weeks and a maximum of 25 weeks under the program. Because of the amount of land that we've identified, we felt that we wanted to apply for the 25 weeks, and the cost would be $10,800 per week for a total of $270,000. And as I mentioned, no matching funds are required. Our grant application names the chair of Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee, David Douglas, to be the project manager, and we will have a team of people designated from the beginning of this project to work with and manage this project, including the reporting that's required during the project and at the end of the project. This grant will be awarded by March 31st. If we're successful, we'll be notified by then. And if the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee met Tuesday evening this week to review the grant application, to really consider all the issues that needed to be addressed in the application, and after a review, voted to recommend to the board that the board approve putting this grant forward on Monday, February 14th, to meet the deadline. I would like to thank everyone who got involved from the moment that we found out about this grant opportunity last Wednesday. Becky, Frank, and Nate Scott, Jesse, Stroop, Adrian Knight, Rocco Blasi, our Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee. Everybody really came together and done everything in their power to get this application pulled together in short order so that we could present it tonight. And I think it's just been a great teamwork experience to have everybody pulled together to try and win this grant. So we do have the grant application attached as part of the agenda package tonight. We do have a map that outlines and shows the areas that we are recommending and applying for the grant funds and for the work to be done. Those are included. It's probably easier to show the map and have you look at it to sort of get you oriented to where we're talking about. But we're really focusing along the Thomas Trail and the Bratton and Catamount Trail on the town-owned land. There's 16.37 acres in parcel 1 that we want to put into this project. The purple areas are the priority egress routes that we feel need some work. And then we have undeveloped rights of way within the town. And a good example of that is the Iona right of way that we had already defined as a major project under the CUSP grant. But there are other rights of way throughout the town that need work similar to that. In addition, the large tract of town-owned land, which I believe is in total about 150 acres, over there in the west sort of corner where it says number 4, but that entire amount there, about 150 acres, we're proposing between that green hatched area and the other number 4, right behind Hondo, would be about 36 acres for continuation of fuels mitigation that was started by CUSP along the Thomas Trail. So this continues to reinforce the commitment to a major fire break along the Thomas Trail on the south side of town, the north-facing mountain. One of the major issues that we've had to address with the grant is the disposition of the material that's removed. We have talked with the Department of Natural Resources, the administrators of this grant. They understand that lock and scatter is really the only alternative we have. So we will, as we're cutting the materials, we'll just be scattering it appropriately, and it will stay in place. The larger rounds will be allowed to stay in place for a period of about a year to dry out, and they will be moved down as part of the project to areas where they can be collected by the residents of the town who use as firewood. And that will be included as part of the Mile High Youth Corps scope of work, is moving those rounds down the mountain. So we believe that in managing the project and dealing with the materials, the mitigated fuel materials, as we have a great solution to the in-kind portion of this grant. We think we have a good partner with Mile High Youth Corps, who we've worked with for the last 10 years in trail building. So we have a great relationship there. We heartily recommend the board approve going forward with this grant application.
Okay, David, thank you. I think people are going to have a lot of questions, but I'm going to start. Have you talked to Public Works at all about, especially about the undeveloped right-of-way?
We have not. We were just trying to identify areas of need around town where we could put these funds to work.
Okay, and that makes sense. It's just,
as I pointed out, we only became aware of this grant last Wednesday, and it hasn't afforded us a lot of opportunities to get down to some of the details.
Understood. They are a major resource for you, though, especially with what is and is not town parcels. And I do believe you're probably going to run into some landowner issues, because a lot of people think that the undeveloped right-of-way is their property. And that's a place we need to address. Couple other questions. So you're asking for 25 weeks of work, and it can go through December of '23. So I assume this isn't consecutive weeks of work, or how would that be proposed?
Our timeframe for the work is between July of this year and November of '23. The reason that we're assuming that the grant is issued by March 31st, that gives us sort of April, May, June to really develop the scope, do the planning, work with Mile High in terms of their staffing and getting their Sawyer crew scheduled in. So have basically designated July through November for those 25 weeks. It may or may not be consecutive. Obviously, we'll have to deal with weather issues in that time frame. So, it will be 25 weeks within that time that we have between now and the end of 2024.
Okay. I would also say that I love your enthusiasm and I totally support it, but I couldn't support volunteers managing this. I mean, as we know from how grants operate, you're really going to need a member of the staff to be the point of contact and manage the grant overall. And that's not just a Jane opinion, that's is good legal advice as well. Board, go ahead and jump in.
So yeah, I agree with that. And I know that our staff is taxed, but I really believe that a project of this magnitude, it has got to go through our staff. And especially running everything, the app passed Becky first before final approval, because she is familiar with grant writing, she is familiar with grant management and reporting, and we want to make sure that we're able to do this so we don't lose this opportunity farther on down the line. And my concern is with volunteers doing this, that there may be a disconnect with the reporting requirements and knowing what needs to be reported and what needs to be reported when and where. And I agree that legally it should be a member of town staff.
Okay. Since we first became aware of this grant, we have had town staff involved at every step of the way in terms of, with the verbiage, the writing of the grant, considering all the issues. I mean, I can't speak for Becky or Nate, but I certainly got a sense that they were on board and very supportive of the application that we have written, and I would assume that they had intended to be involved with the oversight and management of this. And like I said, I can't speak for them, but
okay. And I think part of the oversight includes being the project manager. But that's my opinion of this from the outside looking in.
I certainly will not have any objection to that.
Okay.
At all. We were trying to put forward something that would not overburden town staff. We were trying to make this as acceptable as possible without overburdening the town staff, and recognizing that they have their own already pre-programmed jobs to do. But I'm certainly not objecting to saying that the town staff person needs to be the project manager. But it doesn't bother me at all. We will still provide all the support for it.
Great, appreciate that. Yeah, and again, we do have a busy staff, and we totally appreciate your enthusiasm, but knowing how things run in the grant world, we want to put staff in place there. Another question I had is about the timing of the 25 weeks. And I get the want to shoot for the moon and ask for everything, but are we a bit more realistic to look at maybe applying for the 6 weeks, knowing that we can accomplish the 6 weeks, especially considering some of the trouble we've had in getting some of the work done, whether it's because of weather or volunteers or what have you. Because I think if we could forcefully complete a project for 6 weeks, it gives us a lot more leg to stand on for the next grant when we can say, look what we've done.
Well, I don't think there's any, my view is that I don't think there's any guarantee that if we apply for 25, we're going to get 25. You know, it's likely we will not, because there's going to be a lot of competition, I think, for this grant. We were simply trying to, you know, go in for more and realizing that we likely will get less and live with what we get. I will remind that the SWIFT crews are now coming back online, but there is a lot of demand for the SWIFT crews. We are going to begin seeing work in our area through CUSP on the grants that were awarded last year. And the cost per acre, just roughly, in the area that we're talking about, is approaching $4,000 per acre. This is very rough terrain. It's very difficult to work in above the Thomas Trail. And I think it's, you know, it will be very easy to consume as many weeks as we can get, up to 25 weeks. And it's sorely needed. I mean, our forest in that area is some of the worst in the state in terms of the condition of the forest and the potential for wildfire. So I think
No one's disputing
I
that.
feel like we need to take advantage of this opportunity and go for as much as we possibly can get.
No one's disputing that the work needs to be done. That's not even an issue. I just think I have a couple of questions regarding that. And part of it is, sometimes if you ask for too much, you get nothing. So if you ask for 25 weeks, what are the chances that you get part or that you get nothing? Because I think your chances are more likely that you would be granted a smaller grant rather than a big one. Because if I'm doling out the money, and I've seen this with DOLA, they'll choose 2 smaller communities rather than give somebody not much.
Well, I think we have some things going for us. Number one is it is well known that Green Mountain Falls in our area is one of the highest risk areas in Colorado. We have a demonstrated history of remediation with CUSP and with the Historic Green Mountain Falls Foundation. We are an active community in terms of mitigation, and that's one of the things that is important to the Department of Natural Resources. They're really after the high profile at-risk areas of the state. So I can't believe that we would walk away empty-handed because we asked for too much. I think there's a low probability of that.
Okay. Please.
David, I'd like to respond a little bit to that, and it's kind of been in my experience that a lot of the granting organizations are going to evaluate their application's capacity to implement a really strong and successful project. And I think that that ends up, kind of being my concern, particularly with this being directed towards a staff project with your support. Nathan and I are both taking on pretty robust roles right now. I think being able to demonstrate that, and Nathan's super enthusiastic. He's developed a rapport with the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee and working with you all, and he's demonstrated willingness to continue and carry this forward. I do think having an opportunity to do sort of this pilot project and do it really, really well and demonstrate through this project additional need for so much more work will not only position us really well for a second or third round of this particular application, but also other outside, other opportunities. So I'd like to ask you to consider that.
And I have a question. Is it an all or nothing? Is it only this amount of weeks or only the maximum, or can we kind of meet in the middle somewhere?
There's absolutely room for compromise.
Maybe it would be realistic to meet in the middle somewhere for the application. And then, if they give us that, that's great. We know it'll be manageable, but if it's less, that's okay too. We know that will be manageable for future recourse.
David, within this application, can you identify some critical areas to start in and help to prioritize those?
Well, I think it makes sense to continue the work along Thomas Trail to continue to connect what CUSP is already doing and to come down closer to the landowners to expand that the zone. So adding on to current projects and current work that is being done makes sense. Looking over to the west to the Bratton Trail and the Catamount Trail, that is probably the most difficult to access and to work. If I were going to reduce some of the land area that we want to try and remediate, that might be it, because like I said, it's harder to get to, it's harder to get the bowls out, and it's a little further away from structures, homes and whatnot. Whereas the Thomas Trail, where we've already been working with CUSP, and also the area number 1, which is 16 acres, continues along the Thomas Trail and is immediately behind residents in the town. So we will be opening up a protective zone in those areas. I do feel like, so to answer your question, I think, if I were looking at it in terms of priority, I'd still stick with number 1 and perhaps 4 along the Thomas Trail, parallel to Hondo. And I would really want to look at the priority egress, because that has been continually pointed out to us by all the professionals, that our egress routes are not sufficient to have firefighting equipment coming in and out, and to get residents out. So, I think this is an opportunity for us to address our priority egress routes. And let's face it, that's also easier work. So, it's likely that the materials can be removed more easily, might be able to progress more easily, but it might take more town management along those, because we're going to have to look at the survey, to make sure that we're not getting on private property. I think pretty widely known that property in some cases is in the middle of the road. So, we'll have to sort out some of those things.
I'm sorry.
I'm really having to respond sort of spontaneously here because, and just share with you my thoughts off the top of my head, but hopefully I've been responsive to your question, Becky.
Thank you, David. Nathan, do you and David both have time tomorrow where you'd be able to revise this map for the application to not really take anything out, but to put in those areas of phase one and then potentially identify some areas that if the crew were to complete the work in phase one, they'd be able to easily move into a second phase?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to modify that. It's pretty easy to modify the map accordingly and the application.
Well, and I understand the want to work on the egress. I don't disagree with that, but you're right. The trouble is going to be with the survey and the landowners. And people are pretty protective of their trees if they believe it's their property. So I think that would also be have its own challenges if we don't have up-to-date surveys on all of that.
Would there be time to do the surveys before July?
Well, and who's paying for them? You know,
Right.
because the surveys aren't part of this
Yeah.
process. That's a whole other issue. Not that it doesn't need to be done, but it's a whole other issue.
Right. And the cost of a survey, yeah, is it like thousands per property? Yeah.
I mean, if it's just the right of way going down and back, I mean, that's different than a straightforward lot too, you know, so
It's not the whole lot. It's the,
right, it's following those points down, which is,
If you have pins, you know, if you have pins in place. And some properties do and some do not. So that's another issue, but not that it doesn't need to be done, just a different head there, different mindset.
I think I know the answer to this, but does the town have any old surveys to my knowledge? I mean, our records obviously are pretty scarce after that town hall fire, but I don't even know if even before then.
Even prior to the fire, surveys are far and few between. It's mostly been when private property owners do it. We rely pretty heavily on El Paso County, but we also know that a lot of their surveys are incorrect, especially when you go online. It's a good guess, but it's not precise.
any estimate about the number of acres that could be done per week in that number one priority area?
I have no idea.
If anyone knows how long it took CUSP to do
Oh, that little part up on
these
the window.
areas, then we have that map here. Let me bring that up real quick. Maybe. Shoot, this is not the map I was looking for. But they did, it was only like 4 acres, that first one. And if anyone knows, I can bring
It
it.
took
I'll
quite a
find it.
while because they had issues with the work crew, as I remember too. Something happened and they weren't able to finish. They had to come back. And I don't know, did we ever get the final report that it was finished? I don't remember if we did. Because I know we requested that. Do you remember if we got that final report, if it was finished or not?
It has been completed.
Okay. Can we maybe have that report forwarded again, just for record and new employees'
It
knowledge?
should be in the town's possession, because the town had to get the report in order to pay the final funds to the due. I don't have it, I don't think anyone from fire mitigation advisory committee has it.
I'll research it, and if I don't find it, I'll reach out to CUSP.
Thank you.
So this green area supposedly is only about 4.3 acres or
And
something,
that was
so
It took a long time.
I don't know how long that took, but I know it takes a decent amount of time per acre up there.
And that was with Swift Cruise?
Yes,
So we're talking about a different crew this time. And do we know how much supervision they need? I mean, do we have to provide any supervision of those
Well,
crews
yeah, he
or?
said that there would be volunteers to do the supervision.
we would not be directing the crews. They are trained, Sawyer crews that are under the direction of Mile High Youth Corps. Our job in terms of overseeing and managing is to develop the scope and the areas to be worked and to make sure that the, property lines are identified so that they're, they stay within the town-owned property limits. But, as far as day-to-day supervision of the crews, that's not going to be the case. Basically, there are, I think, 8 points of project management. Number one is we will have to have a site visit with the crew manager before the final grant agreement.
Mhm.
We will have to provide technical project assistance, maps, specialty work tools and project supplies, although we've already talked to Mile High, and they say that they will not require any. Project site evaluation for analysis of work completed. All reporting, including final report, lawful access, and relevant maps. Yeah, thanks. Put it up there for me.
Okay, so realistically, do we have access to all of these requirements at this point? Do we know? Without having to expend a big chunk of cash?
Yes, as far as I mean, I think we have all the maps. I don't see where there would be any cash outlay required on any of these.
The only thing I can think of, so when I spoke to Courtney and to CJ, they said that some of the things, camping locations wouldn't be necessary. The crew is local enough to go home at night. One of the things that I was thinking about as far as specialty work tools, do we have access to a chipper to where we can, they would be able to feed it?
Well, and I saw something in here, I didn't know if that was accurate or not. Does the town own a chipper?
So the town owns a
Do
chipper,
we? Okay.
but the philosophy has always been that must be run by town employees due to CIRSA.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be, again, it's something Public Works needs to be involved with.
So they don't have a chipper?
The crew that comes does not have a chipper.
Right, I saw in here that it said we will be supplying town chipper and town dump truck.
So that would need to, we'd need to make sure
That would need to be coordinated.
right, and we need to make sure that Public Works would have that time to do it in between other
Right.
projects, so.
Right, that's another thing. We would also need insurance from Mile High, and listing the town as additional insured, for sure.
See, and I'm not super familiar with the grant writing process. I'm more familiar with the reporting process. So
Well-
I'm trying to look through here to see if anything else jumps out at me.
Well, if those are the only tools that they need, I see that it's on the list that we provide specialty work tools and project supplies as required. And I think, Mr. Douglas, you just said that that they have what they need other than the dump truck and the wood chipper.
We have asked CJ Lunch if they would require any specialty work rules or supplies, and her answer was they have everything they would need.
Becky, with your work with emergency management, are you comfortable with the lop and scatter? Or would we want to request that not be how it's done?
It was, thank you, Nate. In addition to, just, best practices for emergency management, of course, and, also within this grant, they do recommend that fuels be removed from the area. My biggest concern ends up being with, any big lengths of wood, those 100-hour fuels, 1,000-hour fuels that would be left to cure. And it'd be my preference that they be removed while we've got the crew here. It's a crew of young people, and it would definitely take the burden off of additional volunteers here. So I would prefer to have as much as possible of that material removed from the forest. And then, of course, and that's kind of why I asked about the chipper too, just being able to chip as much of it to where at least it's not creating additional ground fuel. Just a preference that I have. It makes me feel better about the project for sure.
Well, I'm working on grants in the past. I know I've always got it in the back of my mind to make sure that we're going to be capable of completing the work. Partly because, we don't want to leave money on the table, but also because, I think it affects future grants too. We want to have a strong reputation for, successful grant administration and getting these in projects.
Absolutely, and that that's another concern too of having things cure too far into the future out in the forest. It's not uncommon for communities to have turnover of staff, turnover of volunteers. I would much rather see this project done, complete, closed out, rather than have it be something that's going to be extending into the future beyond any time that we can all predict.
I don't think that we are proposing to extend it in the future beyond what we can predict. We actually said cut rounds allowed to season for 1 year. Volunteers will remove no later than December 31, 2024. I have talked to CJ Lungy with Mile High. She has agreed that they will bring down the rounds to points where they are easily picked up by residents. So I think we're addressing, it's not open-ended. The rounds are being brought down so that there won't be any danger that they're left behind after the work crew is gone.
Thank you for that clarification.
Well, and I want to clarify, because this is the first we're hearing the December 2024 date. Was that an accurate date, or was that supposed to be 23?
We are allowed under the application to state an end date for removal of the fuels. And we talked to Courtney, I don't remember Courtney's last name, who is the manager of this particular grant for the Department of Natural Resources. Dan Batten, who was on our committee, talked to her. I believe Becky also has talked to her, and it has it seems to be the consensus that this is an acceptable plan for dealing with the fuels that are generated or removed.
Can we go ahead and change that language in there to where those cut rounds are brought to a distribution point, versus, you know, I mean, to where people could pick them up versus, I'd like it to be defined a little bit better.
Sure.
I was thinking maybe we could, just, instead of this 2024 date, just put in the work, if we're gonna perhaps reduce the acreage, we could try to focus more work to bringing the rounds down to a distribution point and have them at said point before the end of 2023. That way, all that work is done and there's not
And it's
that
within the time frame.
lingering extra year or whatever that may or may not, you know, get
Well,
done by.
can't people that remove them, let them cure on their own?
People could
property?
cure them themselves, in other words, and just get them out of there by the grant deadline so that we remove those
Absolutely.
concerns.
Absolutely. And plus, again, there's still the work crew that can help at that point.
Right.
Well, I mean, let's remember, we're paying them essentially for 320 hours of work per week to do, you know, to accomplish the scope of this project. And if the scope of the project is to bring down the rounds to a central collection point, then that is part of our contract in the scope of work with Mile High Youth Corps.
Mhm.
Right, I'm just saying we should remove that 2024 date just to get that out of, remove that expectation that that part of it is gonna linger, because we added that, this, you know, that was kind of one of the final edits that we made when we were thinking about it, but it may not, it seems to not make sense, so just kind of,
All you have to do
Specify
is
in the
change the 4 to a 3.
right.
I mean, that's the only thing you have to edit in that whole sentence.
Well, yeah,
Well, what
just,
about volunteers removed?
yeah, just
Oh,
the
yeah,
seasoning and the
volunteers,
volunteers and all that, we could remove that and then just specify as part of the scope that the crews would be expected to, bring them down to the
To the
collection
designated
points,
area. Mhm.
before the grant, before that work deadline
Because if
occurs.
somebody wants to volunteer, they can certainly volunteer before then and help the crew out. It's not like that's prohibited, but at least it's a more quick deadline and within the time of the grant
Yeah, I really like the idea that the work is completed.
and not lingering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we've answered that question. We've answered the question about who the point people are, and that is our staff. The only other question that I have out there lingering is, are we gonna ask for 12 weeks?
I'd like to ask for something in the middle.
Well, it was
12's
6
in the
or
middle.
25.
12's in the middle.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree that
This is like-
6 weeks doesn't seem enough,
No,
and nearly enough, considering how much work was done already.
right,
And I don't even know how
And how
long
long
that
it took.
took, but
yeah, it was way more than.
And
But,
how
yeah.
does
but there
staff
were- there
feel
were like
about that
stops and starts and
that-
stuff.
length of time, considering you have, things?
I'm willing to put in the work. I mean, that's easy to say right now because I don't know exactly what this entails, but I'm definitely willing to help, and do the work for sure. I guess I personally feel that there's a lot of work up there to be done.
Yeah.
So the more, the better, I feel like, but I also understand the concerns. And I haven't been a project manager on a grant before, so I don't exactly know what that workload is. So I'm sure Becky could speak more to that, but I'm definitely willing to do it, to do the work.
I'm happy to help Nate with the grant process.
Well, I'm not worried that you can do it. I know you can do it. That's not an issue.
The real reality.
The question that lingers for me is if we ask for something like 25 weeks, my personal feeling is, having gone through lots of government grants, is that you're more likely to get a giant grant booted. They won't offer, here's just a couple of weeks for you, here's 6 weeks. You're more likely to ask something realistic, and you'll get budgeted for that. And I don't know if Green Mountain Falls really,
Grant processes too.
right? So
I guess I like the 12 weeks also just because of weather and, I don't know, the first project we didn't go so smoothly. And, I'm hoping this one goes more smoothly than the last one, but it just seems like a huge leap to go from what we did that was bumpy to something that's 25 weeks.
Which project are you referring to?
The CUSP project with the SWIFT.
How did it
Crew.
not go swiftly?
It did not go swiftly.
No,
It was a SWIFT crew.
How did it not go smoothly?
Well, they had to stop before they were finished.
multiple times, and we
I
didn't
think
have,
we had an outbreak of COVID.
regardless.
Shut down the cruise. I mean, I don't think we can say that CUSP, didn't perform. I think they
No,
did.
and I'm not saying that. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that it didn't go smoothly. So it wasn't like, oh, we signed up for this and it got done in this particular amount of time as predicted. And
Right,
It
I guess you're making the point that you can't predict that it will.
Right.
Be able to have.
that
it
wasn't
in the
that wasn't a
timeframe.
huge project and it was unpredictable.
And I would feel a lot more confident that we could manage and complete a 12-week project, even though it's not everything we've ever wanted to do, but we would be successful and we could show that we've been successful. And that's so important in the grant world, to show that we started, completed, did a good job.
And we can apply for another grant.
Right.
Now, is this grant, is this a newer grant? So we don't know if there's gonna be cycles in the future, do we?
It is a newer grant. I think that there are things that have been similar before, but this pot of money, this funding was just released, and probably in light of recent events that have occurred. Our fire seasons have been pretty significant around here. So it is going to be reviewed monthly on a rolling basis while funding and crews are available. I do feel, in talking to both Courtney and CJ, the urgency is to get it in the first
To
cycle.
get the application in.
Well, while the crews are still available, so that we
Yeah.
can get on their schedules.
Yeah.
And then funding will continue, or, the opportunities will continue while funding is available. In addition to this, there's a lot of other resources that we can use in the form of hand crews that'll take a little bit more coordination, but they're also available. And I think success in this project will make the community and the town very attractive to those
To
other
other
organizations. But
Right, it's a statewide grant, isn't it? Statewide. And I think one thing to keep in mind when it comes to entire states, Green Mountain Falls is a huge priority to us. I mean, this is my only home, which makes that sort of thing priceless. However, We aren't the only attractive town in the state for this sort of thing. When you look at Breckenridge and the damage that's been done up there, Crested Butte and its value to the watershed, Avon, Vale, Aspen, and they're all fighting similar battles. And some of them have a lot more lucrative money than we do, but some of them also have more value to the state. So I would be more inclined to put our eggs into a grant that says, we're going to do a great job in 12 weeks. We're going to administer this professionally. We're going to get it done and out of the woods before the end of the grant cycle. And I think if there aren't any further questions, I would make that a motion. Make a second and then you can discuss it.
Okay.
The second just allows discussion.
I will second.
All right. Please discuss.
I was just thinking of, these zones, perhaps they could be reframed as phases, as was mentioned earlier. And this was something that we did with the park grant. We presented a huge plan and just asked for funding for phase 1. And I think that that's appealing to the grantors, that you have a vision. It's not like this is all we need. That we have this vision, and this is our starting place, and this is why we're starting here. We have these other areas that are also priorities that we hope to complete in future phases. And hopefully that'll be soon.
So that's true with DOLA grants too. So I would take that as an amendment to the motion to change areas into phases.
Phases, yeah. And I just was just looking at the map. So it looked, or the math rather, that it would be about $130,000 in work for 12 weeks. So, and I would think that our chances are really good of getting that.
Cindy, do you have anything
I
to add?
realize that I'm probably swimming upstream, but Nate has put up a map here that shows, and you've said this many times before, Green Mountain Falls is one of the highest risk areas for wildfire in the state of Colorado.
No one's disputing that whatsoever.
And my philosophy in life has been, when the cookies are passed, you make sure that they come, because there may not be any more when the plate comes back around.
Well, my philosophy's been, if you try to grab the whole plate, your grandma's going to smack you in the hand and you aren't going to get any. So I tend to think we can go realistic and have a really good chance.
Well, my title is Chair of the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee, and we have given you our recommendation and our advice, and it's up to you to decide how you want to proceed.
All right. Thank you very much. I do appreciate the work you've put into this. Cindy, do you have anything?
No, just the application be revised as we have discussed, that Mr. Douglas's name be removed from the application and Nate's be inserted.
The project manager?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What about the reprioritization or scaling back of the areas? What's I feel like we should have direction on that as well.
Yeah, I think we need to name it in phases. I totally agree with the phase 1 and working along the Bratton Trail the Thomas Trail as being the first priorities.
I thought he said that the number 1 would be The one on here.
So that, yeah, the number
That's
one
number
here,
Thomas.
and then along the Thomas. So that's all
Okay.
along the Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
those would be phase one, and depending on what gets done, move further along the Thomas and maybe towards the Bratton, because although I really want to see the egress is done, and I think we all see that as a priority, I also think we need to maybe talk to some of our friends in local affairs and see what kind of work we can get done on surveys so we can make that project go smoothly and quickly instead of running into homeowner dispute with property. So I
Yeah.
think we need to reach out with someone else who can help us with surveys.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that this is a really good point that's been brought up by this grant application, is that we really need to work on those surveys. So that's, but it is another project.
Would you be comfortable with it being revised to have those phases and the contingency within the grant? That if a barrier were to be presented in one phase or the work be completed, that we have the ability to move to a different phase?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And what is it realistic for that work frame, the 1 and 4 that are there along Thomas Trail, to turn that into phase 1, or just leave the one where it is and maybe make that other one 1A?
I think, yeah, we can phrase it as this being one, all.
Phase 1?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we could just leave the other ones, then turn the 4 over on Bratton into phase 2.
Right.
And then we just need to decide, and FMC can give us guidance for this too. What would be phase 3, the underdeveloped right of way or the priority egress routes?
That's going to be
It's gonna have
hand
to
in
be-
hand, because even our undeveloped right of ways, some people
Some
believe it's
people,
their
yeah.
property, and
Yeah.
in some cases, it is their property.
Yeah.
So that's going to be also a survey question.
So either one of those could be listed as the alternate phases.
And some of it's
One or
low
the other
hanging
being
fruit. I
priority.
mean, some of it we know, some of our right of ways we know because we use them for town purposes. But there's others that are going to be a lot more difficult.
So this is not to say that we don't agree with the list of priorities as you've described them in this application on this map. But it's just that some of them we just can't practically do. Like, I think the egress is a huge priority, but we have to do the
A lot
groundwork
of-
first.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think with our egress and with right-of-ways, those components, oftentimes, there's additional resources that can be brought in for those, utilizing the information in our hazard mitigation plan or having that updated the next time it comes around. In addition, oftentimes if we've gotten utility lines or utility egresses through there, the utility companies can be very helpful. So I'm excited about, exploring all the options.
That's great. Yeah, I think that gives us more opportunities. All right. So we've had discussion. There is a motion with amendment. There's a second. Is there anything further?
Just to clarify, we're talking about 12 weeks
12 weeks,
and whatever that
And
grant amount comes to.
Changing it to phases.
changing it to phases, outlining what phases are.
And of course, don't forget that the project manager, I guess, needs to be chosen and named.
Right, yeah, they said that, would be me as part of that.
We
Okay,
chose
so-
Nate.
So that'll need to be changed.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I know
All right,
that,
so I guess the completion of the grant application will need to be done. I guess the other thing to decide is, are you planning to submit the grant on Monday, the 14th? And if so,
Yes.
then all these changes need to be incorporated into the grant, presumably tomorrow.
Yes, yep, we'll do that.
Becky will do that.
Nate and I will work on it tomorrow.
Okay,
All right,
Good.
and I know that Nate has a really good working relationship, and Becky too, with the Fire Mitigation Committee. I appreciate everybody's work that has gone into this. I really appreciate, and I can't emphasize this enough, the collaborative nature of this, because we've had other groups in the past that their enthusiasm got ahead of them and they kind of went down a path that the board was unaware of. So I really, really appreciate everyone coming together and working on this and having a chance to ask questions and make comments. So with that being said, all those in favor of this grant with the corrections and changes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And seeing none opposed, that passes. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We will adjourn this meeting at 8:07.
Thanks all.
Good work. Good work. I liked the questions and the comments, and I just felt.
Not easy though, because, I mean, it's like work that needed to be done yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a scramble.
Sorry,
Make sure we put it-
No, I don't mean for the grant, I mean the